Thank you so much. Oh, so you're putting, perfect, thank you. So we got Anne. All right, I'm letting you into the room.
You want them in between you or sitting next to you?
I need them on either side because I need to be able to show them what's going on with the page numbers are different in all of our stuff.
Okay.
And there was no way to avoid it, but it's going to be really confusing for them.
Recording in progress.
Testing.
Kim Bowdry, can you hear me on the Zoom?
I can.
And we can hear you. Could you talk a little bit more to test it and make sure?
Yes. What do you want me to talk about? My crazy profile picture that I was changing during the recording?
I love it. You're coming through great. So I think this will work. Thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome.
The call to order. Roll call, please.
Yes. Susan Fowler. Matt Hausman. Daphne Mauer. Elaine Palencia. Kyle Patterson. Julian Rappaport.
Here.
Jane Sprandel. Jean-Paul Joachim.
Here.
Joe Omo Sagie.
Here.
Deb Ruch. Georgiana Schuster. Sue Suter. Kim Wolwick Fisher. And Robin.
So just like I did not use the microphone just now, I want to remind everyone to use the microphone.
Go ahead and approve the agenda.
So moved.
Roll call. Susan Fowler,
Yes.
Matt Houseman,
Yes.
Daphne Maurer. Sorry, Elaine Palencia,
Yes.
Julian Rappaport, Jane Sprandel,
Yes.
Sean Paul Joachim,
Yes.
Joe Oma Sagie,
Yes.
Deb Rush, Georgiana Schuster, Sue Suter, and Ann Robin.
Yes.
Motion carried.
So citizen input.
I can't see the chat. I think it's possibly, someone
pull it
entered
up.
something into the chat, but I can't read it. So if anyone on the Zoom would like to participate, maybe raise your hand. I'm not seeing anything. I don't see any raised hands in the Zoom.
Okay. So move right along. So I don't really have much of a comment today because I was going to sing happy birthday to Stephanie, but she's not here. So Anne, you have a comment?
I'll make very brief comments. It's always good for the two boards to get together, so that's a good thing. The occasion for our getting together is problematic, sad, et cetera. And I was asked before the meeting started, saying that the mental health board is going to be very interested in what the DD board has to say about this. I don't think we have any major words of wisdom. It's a very tough situation. I don't think any of us feel really good about having to even discuss stopping a project that we had been so enthusiastic in getting going and seemed like it was going so well. So with that being said, I guess we can just go ahead and have the discussion. Yes, Lynn would like to make a comment.
It's not on the agenda, but I wanted to tell you that at the table are a couple of documents. You have received these through email and they have been posted on the website. This is the revised agenda. The only news is a little bit of language about our uncertainty, how the public participation would work, and that there may be additional information. And then the additional information is this briefing memo that's 3 pages that we prepared. I've emailed it to you, but I thought it would be helpful for you to have it here. And then also on the table is hot off the presses, a little bit, it's a draft budget. I mean, it's really a draft of the accounts so far, and it may not be fully complete. Chris Wilson was working on this with me today. We may be missing a few expenditures. We're still trying to figure it all out, but I thought this was maybe more helpful than the budget that was in the original packet. So those are just for information. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Susan?
Lynn, could you just walk us through the budget, because it would be helpful to understand exactly what it means, since we've just gotten it,
Well,
so.
this is the loose page on the table. It's similar to the one that was in the packet that you had last week, but it adds 2014 and 15, which were not recorded in the same way. 2014 and 15 were recorded in notebooks full of paper documents. And so we've been exploring that. There's a lot of really great information there, but if we don't see it in the county's accounting system, then we can't believe it actually happened that way. So we're still verifying those 2 columns. We're pretty sure the revenues are right, but there might be something missing. Then from 2016 forward, those are actual until you get to this year, and that's just a projection for this year. I'm projecting expenses and revenues based on no one moving into the houses for the rest of the year. And then the 2022 column is for if the houses are empty, here's a potential budget that would protect them. It's probably more than you would need, and we could even add more to it just in case. We've walked through the houses recently, and there is quite a bit of work to do on the inside and outside of each house. So we could make them better while they sit empty. We could ask the property manager to do it right now if you choose to sell them. But if you don't choose to sell them, this is what a budget could look like in 2022 without people living in it. So, is that clear?
But
So when I get down to the bottom of the page and it says total expenditures, and this would be if we kept it empty, just projecting to 2022, then the expenditures would be 36,000. And the revenue over expenditures, could you explain that?
That's because the CCDDB contribution would be made during that year because we're still moving toward a balance.
That's the 50,000?
Yeah, that's the 50,000. And the county has suggested that we plan for worst case scenarios so that it's budgeted. And the worst case scenarios would be in those two lines, repairs and building improvements. We could just add some budget there to cover expenditures. Also, $6,176 of this doesn't have anything to do with the SILA. It's a trust for one individual. So that expenditure, that is reflected because we manage it there, but it went from 20,000 to 6,000 over the last few years, and I expect that'll probably be gone by 2020. But it is kind of confusing in there.
So I just really want to understand the financials before we get into the discussion. So for the current year, 2021, because the PD board is still putting $50,000 forward for the SILA, it means that the expenses are $2,000 after the 50,000 or what?
Well, those expenditures are just what the budget says. This is the budget we created last
Estimated.
year, so
Yeah.
the expenditures could be quite a bit less.
Okay,
We don't, this is just based on sort of a guess, based on what we have right now and what we've done in the past. So those,
okay. So this
that
is all based on the assumption that the DD board is happy to continue to put $50,000.
they already did.
They've already, and also next year. So I know the mental health board has paid off its portion.
Right.
And the DD board has 2 years left, or?
Well, if they want to equal the mental health board contribution, 2 more years, but we're already, like, the contributions are already over what we actually need. So
Right.
there could be a different way to equalize, but
Okay.
yes, 2 more years.
Okay, yeah, that just helps me get a framework for understanding what the scope of the
Yeah.
potential settlement might be, or loss, or whatever. Yeah, thank you.
where do we start from?
And the page numbers in your board packets from last week don't match. No, because you had different business from each other.
Yeah, go ahead.
We primarily considering the memo, or are we going back to the whole section of last week that covered the appraisals and everything else?
That's up to you. I've prepared the memo based on last week's meeting and then prepared the budget because I thought it might help me understand the memo better. The more we looked, the more information we found and had to make more corrections, and I just ran out of time.
Well, I think the memo is extraordinary. And the fact that you could do it in a week is also extraordinary and extremely helpful, given the 100+ pages that we had to go through. I mean, this is a fabulous summary to know where we are. So I'll be quiet now, but
I mean, I guess I'll start the discussion. Just thinking through this, I just want to, I know we talked as the mental health board, but I'd like to hear the DDB board, their thoughts on how long they would be willing to keep the property without any residents in it. I know from our discussions in the past meetings and with talking with Lynn, it doesn't seem like there will be any foreseeable future options. So we probably will be keeping this empty for at least a year, probably, if not longer, because of the limitations on the funding or the wages that the employees can be paid. I didn't know what their discussion was, what your guys' discussion was on other options for using this facility, these homes.
Go ahead.
I'm Deb Roosh, DDB. I've been really close to this project from the time I came on the board, and it was already underway before I started on the board. And in some ways, I have a little bit more skin in the game than perhaps any other board member on either board, because my son is one of the individuals who served by this particular agency in a privately owned home, not one of the county homes. So I've said it before, it's like a gut punch to see this happening, especially in the face of so much need. But my husband and I have, over the course of the past year in particular, done a lot of work in speaking with other providers. Every provider that we could think of as a good possibility or a good fit for this community, both for the sake of our son and for the individuals in the other county-owned homes. And it was painful. It was a painful process. And there is truly no interest, just because it's not sustainable. There's nobody who can afford to do business currently in the state, let alone in our community. So I've come to the conclusion that it's just a waste of our funding to try to keep those homes open and empty. Just short and sweet. And it's really, really difficult to say that, but I don't see any rainbow at the end of this for individuals in our county to have a happy ending from a housing standpoint, both, of the people who have been pulled from the funds list, and there's significant need, but there's just really no option at this point in my mind.
Thank you. Julie?
No, I just wondered if you could clarify, what does it mean that they can't afford to do this business? What exactly is it how many dollars they're missing, or what exactly does that mean?
It's really difficult for me to say exactly what the shortfall is currently in our son's home, but just knowing what I know, they're probably losing $60,000 or $70,000 a year just operating his home right now with 2 individuals in it.
I'm not sure I could, sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Well, really, the homes are chronically understaffed. That's the biggest issue right there in a nutshell, is the DSP workforce shortage. So they're spending, the group home agencies, not just IAG, are spending a whole lot of money in overtime and trying to hire staff that can just go work at Target, for more money, basically, even with the increases that the state's proposing and have already given. They're insufficient. So the biggest, that's the biggest problem right in a nutshell, is that staffing is it's unsustainable. Yeah, because of salary, right. And because of competitive employment opportunities elsewhere, it's difficult work and you have to have the right heart for it. And you can't just hire, anybody to do this work. And for so many people, Hobby Lobby, Target, McDonald's, they're all better options. They pay about the same or sometimes more. So, and it's not, it's seeing that because of COVID, COVID made everything worse too, right?
Just,
Go
if
ahead,
if I can ask, just follow it up, I just want to make sure I understand this. Are the salaries limited legally? Or if we could raise the money, say, for example, if we had a fundraising campaign and individual people contributed, could the money that was raised be used to pay staff, or is that illegal?
Medicaid supplementation. That's a really good question. One attorney would say that that's illegal, and the next guy would say it's not. So I can't answer that. Lynn has a whole
You
lot more
can-
information about that than I
Well,
do.
you
and
can
probably-
shower those people with all sorts of gifts.
Yes,
And there's, the American Rescue Plan Act, clearly creates opportunities to pay folks retroactively some bonus payments for the time that they put themselves at risk, which in this field is every day. It's very much like what we heard at the county board meeting last night about life inside the jail. I mean, you go to work and you're at risk. So they would clearly be eligible for that kind of pay. And the state of Illinois has American Rescue Plan Act funds, but I have not heard anything about them trying to supplement DSP pay that way. So supplementing it through a taxing body like this potentially puts the agency at risk for Medicaid supplementation. Because that is the rate that the agency is paid by the state is everybody signs off saying this is inclusive, this is the whole rate, no third-party payments will be accepted. And that's a federal law. Really unfortunate, and the state is kind of in trouble for the low rates. I mean, for 3 years, big trouble. With a federal judge, but we've talked about that before. We just go ahead and be out of compliance.
in addition to then the real difficulty in getting the boots on the ground people, who are so important, the direct service providers, this particular agency, I think, has really also had the challenge of being an outsider in this community, coming here and actually in effect operating the 2 county homes and the home that my son is in, like on a satellite basis. So they've always had a really, really difficult time building that infrastructure, finding administrative staff and keeping them, and QIDPs, case managers. It's just been extra challenging, I think, in a lot of ways for them as an agency that operates primarily many of their homes in South suburbia, and then in other areas that are kind of considered satellite operations for them. They came in and acquired homes with staff and administration that were already in place because they took over homes from other agencies. So having said that, we've spoken with other service providers, and some of the largest in the state, and some of them who, one in particular, how many homes have they closed? 10 homes? Rather large. And so it's not just IAG that's having this problem, it's systemic. But this one provider told us that if IAG can't make this work in Champaign, nobody can.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so I'm Matt Hausman. I'm a new member of the Mental Health Board. So my question for the DDB, something that we've talked about at the Mental Health Board in the last couple of meetings, is I think we're all in agreement that right now the environment is not good for these service providers. But I think Julian brought it up last time, was what about 5 years down, and I'm not asking anyone to predict the future, but in 5, 10 years down the road, if the environment improves and we've sold these houses, we're kind of starting back at square one. So then one of the things that was brought up like last month or the month before was possibly using the houses for putting out an RFP for some other kind of program. I didn't know if the DDB's had any conversations along that line.
Well, we briefly touched on dual diagnosis. You know, is there some way that we can make this a viable operation, right, Lynn, for individuals with MIDD, dual diagnosis? And then we also did talk about a couple of other options too, didn't we? About, in particular, the individuals from the LGBTQ community who have lost their homes for whatever reason. They also have a concurrent developmental disability. But we really never really went too far with either one of those because I honestly don't know that.
So in the first case, that was an older project, and we had even found a house that would be appropriate. And there was a cohort, I think 4 men who had DD and mental health issues who would, seemed like they might be willing to live there, but it was not, we could not buy the house. We couldn't afford to buy another house. That was during the time we were talking about whether we should keep moving forward. So that didn't work out at that time. It could still, but the problem will still be staff. I mean, that's a really legitimate use. These houses, a lot of the money you see in this budget was spent to make these into CILAs. So they're very special. They have that added value if you're going to run a CILA in them. But then on the second issue, when we looked into it, the people that the agency had talked to us about did not appear to actually have a qualifying diagnosis of DD per the state. So they couldn't use CILA funding or home-based support funding to do it. So there would have to be some other avenue to pay for the services. But that's, we just stopped there because they didn't have any state funding. So absent that, it's, where would the rest of the money come from to reuse the houses that way? And again, it runs into that question, like staff, like this is a national problem. It's been a statewide problem for a long time. Before COVID, people were pointing to Champaign County and saying it's a specifically difficult issue here, more so than in other parts of Illinois. I mean, we don't even talk about that anymore because it just pales in comparison to the COVID impact.
I think Ann and Deb said it very well. Ann and Deb has spent a tremendous amount of time meeting with other organizations to see if they might be interested in coming to Champaign. I was on the board. I mean, this is a hard one. I was on the board when we first started this on the DD board. And even at that time, we only had 2 applicants. And the second applicant, we had to go out of our way to get them even to apply. And that was how long ago? 6 years ago. Because of the race, the high turnover, not having applicants for the position. And I think to get a local perspective, you could talk to DSC because they have some SILAs and the problems that they have staffing it and finding applicants to staff it. So I hate this because this is a number of individuals who have families here in Champaign County who now their adult sons or daughters have to go out of the county so they can't be close to their families. So I hate that we can't serve this group as a county. But I think I agree with what Deb said and Ann. I'm just not very hopeful that even with an RFP, we could get people to apply, organizations to apply to manage these homes.
Just to follow up though, I think we keep coming back to for SILA purposes, but I'm saying open it up to something not even SILA. That way we don't actually have to sell the house is. And some other agency, some other organization comes up with some genius solution that using these facilities and the special unique accessibility that they have, where we get into an agreement with them. I don't even know what that could be. I would leave that to the genius innovation of the other people. Work out, that would be some kind of an open RFP, where if you have an idea, we have these two houses that have this special accessibility uses. Can any of your agencies make use of them in some way? And then we would work out some kind of agreement with those agencies saying, okay, you can use this, but we reserve the right that if a SILA opportunity ever provides itself, we still have ownership of the house.
Yeah, I just want to mention another kind of financial pressure that I experienced when I was on the board of CCAMR. And there, if you may remember, that was a parent group that founded the first group home in Champaign County. And we found that, and the trend lately has been to have fewer and fewer people in the group home. We had 7 people in our group home, and that worked fine, except sometimes somebody would move or die in some cases, and then we'd have fewer. And we found that if we had 6 people, we could still break even. But if it dropped to 5, we could not do it. And what happened really was we needed repairs on the home. At that time, these boards would not put any money into bricks and mortar. And we needed a new roof. And for a while, we had only 5 people. And we had to get rid of the home. We had to sell the home to the CTF, which I now understand is no longer the owner. But that was very sad. I mean, the parents that had started the whole movement in this county had to give up just pure dollars and cents. And we could get staff then, that wasn't the issue. But then what about the rent? What about, so that's something that has to be considered as well. If you're going to have these group homes that have, 2 people in them or something like that, then you'll run into that problem.
This is maybe a legal issue that I would defer to Lynn or for her to find out about. But, when we initially proposed the SILA purchases, I was on the board. It was maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Julian was on the board. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not the board should become landowners and the pros and cons. It wasn't an easy decision, but we were compelled by the fact that there were so many unserved adults in our community that we had to try something. So we had to try something and see if it worked. And at that point, we weren't as aware of staffing issues being a problem because there were other group homes at DSC that were working. So we agreed to put $50,000 a year up to almost $1 million, 500 per board. And the mental health board, because it had excess revenue, was able to pay its off and put in the full 500. The DD board's been able to put in about 400,000, a $900,000 investment to support the care and residency of individuals with significant developmental disabilities. Although I think it's great to consider the properties as potentially available for other purposes, we would never have gotten into property ownership had it not been to provide this urgent, highly needed care. And so I really have to raise the question of, is it appropriate to hold on to property in the hopes that 5 years down, maybe we could turn them back into villas, not knowing what the repair costs would be or the renovation costs. And I say this also as a parent who 5 years ago was really forced, was either, okay, the time center homeless shelter didn't work, prison was the other option, or buying a group home, buying a condominium and finding another person to live there and take care of my son. And so, I had resources that others don't have. So I'm not saying that my approach is the model approach. It's not. I'm just saying that this community is still desperate and people are remortgaging their homes, try and figure out some way to serve their adult children with disabilities so that they don't go to jail or end up homeless on the streets and then go to jail, whatever the case may be, or die. And so I just really have concerns about using the property for other options versus putting the money back into mental DD board services, services for individuals with developmental disabilities. And maybe there are other approaches like foster homes, so to speak, where individuals in the community agree to take in to care an individual with a disability. That seems to be a much more common approach in Johnson County, Kansas, where I have 3 nieces and nephews that are in group homes and have had the chance to live with a family versus in a group home. And the same amount of money goes, there are different ways of serving these individuals. So I get really nervous when we talk about, how else could we use the home when the money initially was really put in for the desperate, and I'm saying desperate because it was, need of providing a safe environment and respite for the parents who were keeping their adult children long beyond the point that they could care for them. I mean, many of those parents were in their 70s, and it's a lot. Not that 70 is so old, because I'm getting there, but it's hard to be a full-time parent at 70. So my point is, let's be careful about thinking of other options for the homes in order to hold on to the homes, if in fact we're not meeting the needs of the individuals with developmental disabilities. And that was the focus of the 800,000 or $1 million, whatever it was that we said we were going to set aside. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate all these comments that people are making and also giving the historical perspective. As I'm thinking about this, I think this draft SILA fund document that Lynn has given us gives me guidance. And I had written on a sticky note about $36,000 a year to keep the houses. So to me, the question that we need to answer is, do we want to spend, or I hate to use the word gamble, $36,000 a year? It would really be spending $36,000 a year for X number of years in the hope that something would change in a positive direction and that we could again use them as housing for individuals at need. They've been set up specifically to provide group home housing. That's what the SILA is. I have a son who was in SILAs for quite a long time, and the houses are remodeled specifically for that purpose. So if they were going to be used for another purpose, they might have to be again remodeled. So do we want to spend $36,000 a year? And if we do, how many years do we want to do that, not knowing what's going to happen in the future if we're going to come up with something? Do we want to do it for 1 year? hoping that something would happen in the next year. I'm not sure that that's really likely to happen, but it looks like what we really need to have happen is more money for direct service providers. And it's not an if you build it, they will come situation. It's a if you pay them, then they will come, and then we can provide. Buildings might be less difficult to get than staff.
I mean, as I was listening to all the conversations and thinking back to some of the things I've done prior to respite homes. We have respite homes for when I worked at BSC. We had some respite homes where people could stay for up to a week with parents or with some. It wasn't a consistent home, but you could say I need respite as a parent of an adult or young adult needing services, but it was always available for 1 week at a time or weekend at a time or 2 weeks at a time. I think the limit was 2 weeks. This was 1989 or something like that. And when I looked at mental health in the early 90s, we had respite homes for foster kids, where they would also, the foster parents would say, I've had enough, and this was a respite foster home where the kids could go to and spend a few days giving the foster parents a break. So there are ways, and there are resources that have been used within the community over the years, and in my 30-some years of doing this, there have been several different ways in which we have done some of these things. Thinking, is there a way in which we could use these homes in this manner? And there couldn't be a consistent staffing pattern, but it could be something a little different from what it's just vacant for the next something to go out. But yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting idea, but it still requires staff. And they're also on call. If it's a respite home, it's only when needed. So, I mean, we can't even find staff who will be permanent, full-time people. So maybe it could work. And we haven't tried anything like that with these homes, but every time that we get back to using it for Stilla, I hate this too. Gut punch is exactly the right word for it. I've cried a lot of tears over this. This is a big failure. It is not our failure. It is a system-wide failure. These people are not paid well, and it's, according to the lady who's run these homes for the last few years, the hardest job she's ever had. So I want to learn more about that too. That if it's about more than pay, maybe there are other things that we can do. But I'm concerned that if it were a temporary work situation, we still need licensed Stilla providers to do it, and they may have a difficult time finding staff. But we could, a lot of these ideas we really haven't looked into recently, because we kind of run into this like the doomsday.
All right. So for the disability group, I actually, in the mid to late 90s, I actually worked in Scylla's and such. And, you know, in my late teens, early 20s, I was writing letters to legislators saying this is the hardest job that any of my peers have. We need to be paid for the services we're giving. And so again, I'm not a heartless person when I say it makes me very nervous to pay $36,000 a year and hope that next year tons of people are going to want to run in and work these jobs. It is probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever worked in my life. You know, I did it because I loved it. But right now you can go work at, like you said, Meijer, Dunkin' Donuts, and make far more money than someone who's caring for these individuals. So I worry about the workforce aspect of it. You know, like I said, I worry about spending $36,000 in hopes. You know, I think in the respite idea. I think these are all great ideas. But then I also, as I sat here, I thought, oh my gosh, we've had a homeless crisis lately because CU at Home is closed because of staffing. So the people who we need in these jobs, they're not around here, unfortunately. You know, I have a sister with a disability and probably not found enough where she would have to be in a SILA. She probably could qualify. But you know what? When the day comes that my dad can't care for her or is gone, moving closer to me, and I'll have to just, guess what? This is in charge. So, again, these are great ideas. I know this is a hard decision for everyone, but it makes me very nervous to maybe hold on to the houses because we can pray about it, but I'm not sure it's going to happen.
Can somebody tell me what we're going to do if we don't spend that $36,000? What will we do with it? I mean, the $36,000. Or indeed, what will we do with $400,000 if we sell the house? So, because that'll be a one-time thing, right? That's not $400,000 every year. It's a capital thing. And then once you use it, it's used. So I just want to know what it is that people have in mind that you're going to, what great thing is going to come from getting this money? So I can compare it to what might come on a bet that, you know, the world around us changes all the time.
It'll be a fund balance.
I have a technical question, which is a follow-up in some ways to Julian's. We had this annual payment of $50,000. Is the DD board still committed to put $50,000 towards SILA? And then in which case it's 86,000? Or are we going to stop the requirement for the DD board to put money there? Because I'm thinking about what money does the DD board have to spend on services to individuals with disabilities, and to what extent are we suppressing the availability of funds for services? I've never heard that we've had more than sufficient funds for services, that we've had a surplus. So
The DD board is in a really different situation than the mental health board, way different. So they're only contributing 50,000 a year. That's of which my projection for empty houses is 30,000. That 6,000, remember, is just a person who has a trust fund in there. So 30,000, 40,000, you know. But the 50,000 is just once a year from the DD board. No, it's only, that's just their $50,000 contribution. That's expenditures out of the 50,000. They're going to put 50,000 in, and then we're going to spend 30,000 on the houses empty. And then the next year they could put another 50,000 in, and we could spend another 30,000 on the houses. There is a little fund balance already. The intention of that fund balance was to sustain the project forever once the contributions from the boards were done. You know, that we would have a cushion to pay for any repairs and renovations that were not covered by insurance. So there is a little bit of fund balance that would come. It's 150,000 right now, but that's where the surplus goes each year. If you're putting in 50,000 and only spending 30, you're building the fund balance up a little bit each year. You know, so that there's a chance that the system could redeem itself. But the situation with the DD board and funding for agencies is very different from the mental health board. Each year we lose at least one provider in this area, in DD. And that has everything to do with not being able to hire staff. Now we're in a situation where the providers that we're still funding, the DD board side, return money to the DD board every year because they weren't able to hire staff and spend it. So this is, I mean, this is what, like, I think of it as sort of their, you know, maybe about a decade ahead of the mental health system in this workforce crisis. it's imploding. I mean, I really shouldn't talk because I have such a negative attitude about it, and it's your decision to make, and I'm glad that that it's not my decision to make because I think I'm so negative about the system. I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to share all that, but it's different from, like, in the mental health board still continues to have a little bit of a competitive application cycle. It's a little less competitive every year, but anyway.
No, I just want to say imploding is the perfect word, Lynn. That's exactly what's happening in the whole DD system. It's just imploding, it's unsustainable. And yeah, and so that's why I'm so negative and why I prefer to think of myself as a realist at this point. That the homes, there's something else, something we can do to serve individuals in this community more appropriately with the money that is going towards those homes right now. To be determined, but really, just having them sit there empty and having to pay to maintain them for such a nebulous, cloudy outlook, I don't think it makes sense.
Okay, so one thing we haven't really brought up is the fact that we have two houses. So this would be kind of a nice little split the difference where what if we decide to sell one house, put an RFP out, see what happens in the next year, or like if anyone comes up with, whether it be a respite home or some, as I said, for 13 people in here, there's 150,000 people in the county. Maybe somebody is much smarter than us, comes up with an idea in that next year. And then at the end of that next year, we have that other house, fill it then. And I would assume that would cut from 36 to 18,000 in expenses, roughly.
I think that's right. But I'm sorry,
No, I was just wondering, Lynn, what your perspective is. I know the state currently has crisis homes in Springfield and the Chicago area. And if we were going to try to repurpose one of these homes as a crisis home, what would that take in dealing with the state to try to make that happen here? I mean,
do you want me to ask?
I think it's a question worth asking
Sure.
since we're, just
Because they are
for-
SILAs.
Because I suspect it would be not an easy undertaking to get anywhere with the state, mainly because of staffing, but not just because of staffing, just because it's the state. Pardon me? Licensing. Right.
So I could sure ask the state about that. That's in their budget. Their budget is already like, they're in a position where next year they go into a hole because of how they're spending this year. So they might not want to make a commitment like that, but you know who the provider of those crisis SILA homes? It's IAG.
Lynn, what do you need from us tonight? Is this just a discussion or?
It's a meeting so that if you got to the point in this meeting where you really felt moved to, take an action, you can. But I have not offered any suggested motions because it seemed really obvious that y'all needed a chance to talk to each other. And if this is the first such discussion, that's fine with me. I mean, we can create another opportunity like this. The emotional piece of this is really big for me, so I can appreciate why people might not want to take any action. I don't know if that's what's going on with any of you, but I feel all kinds of ways about it too. And Deb, you've been working with us on this so hard for the last few years that, I mean, I think we know. But everybody else hasn't been involved in all those discussions.
Well, that's why it does kind of feel like a failure in a way, that we just can't get anywhere, but. Pretty much sort of.
So Uh, My, my interest in the mental health board getting together with the DD board, because I didn't really know how you all feel about doing this. So my impression had been that this is something that's more than just a casual interest, but in fact represents not just a service, but a whole direction that that people who think about this would like the county, the state, the country to move toward this kind of a service as opposed to, I don't know what to call it, the other traditional kinds of services. This is a little bit more progressive, I think, community-based living, chance for Wolfensberger's idea about normalcy. And so this would be a step toward normalcy. He has a slightly different term for it, but you know what I'm referring to. So what bothers me is that we took a step, we took a risk, here it is. It was going, conditions occurred that made it look impossible, but I think it was impossible before too. So, and now what I'm trying to grasp is, I mean, I'm not totally resistant to the idea of just selling it and forgetting about it, although I think to me, I don't want to do it unless there's some good reason to do it, not just a bad reason, not just because it's hard or because we're stuck right now, or even with all due respect, because I know you've been working really hard on this and at some point you kind of get tired of doing it. But I think that somehow for us to just stop doing it, I'd like to hear, I haven't heard, maybe I just don't understand because I hadn't thought about this particular problem. So what I don't understand is, what are we going to do with the money that we're going to save? What is it for? Is there some like compelling case for something else to use that money for? Maybe I'm missing something here, but it seems to me that matters.
Well, I mean, I understand that, getting the $400,000 net or whatever for the houses. I mean, once it's allocated, it's gone, it's over. But I also feel like, gosh, is it fiscally responsible to spend $36,000 a year just to say we own two houses that maybe we might use again? So that's the downside of that.
Well, I'm sorry, but the question is, what does fiscal responsibility mean? Is it fiscally responsibility to take the money and do nothing of value with it? So I want to hear what it is of value.
Well, I think
Not just
what
that
would
we
we
have
do
more
of
money.
value is, no, we're not going to just have $400,000 sitting in the account. We'll say, hey, these agencies that we weren't able to give money to because we ran out of money, guess what? We're going to grant you $25,000. We're granting you $50,000 for your program. That's what we're going to do with the money. We're not going to just hold on to it.
They would be one-time grants. That wouldn't be ongoing money, as I understand it. At least not the portion that
True.
comes from selling the houses.
But it's going to continue to cost money to maintain the house, whether they're occupied or unoccupied. Okay, so just because we paid off the houses, let's say, minus the 100,000, there are continuing ongoing expenses. What we don't have now are any revenues coming in from the rental that the individuals who were living in the house were providing, because they were getting HUN's funds or other funds from the state for persons with urgent need for support that were specifically established by the state to allow us to have SILAs. Unfortunately, what's happened is the state has reneged on its responsibility to ensure that that money that families receive can actually be spent to provide their offspring with developmental disabilities with good care. And so now, just to put it in perspective, most of us are going to home-based waivers, where we hire everybody ourselves. So instead of it being IAG's problem, it's now my problem. I have to find the people who are going to provide the support to my son, and I have this wonderful home-based waiver. I frankly would rather have Scylla, but it's not the way that it is. So what we also don't have, and I will say, I've just begun to participate in the National Disability Institute's training for providers and parents to understand how to effectively set up something called an ABLE account that allows individuals with disabilities to have more than $2,000 in savings. If you have more than $2,000 right now, you lose your SSI or SSDI. This allows them to have up to $100,000 for crisis care, or emergencies, or whatever, disability-related expenses. So, I don't have a proposal today, but some of the money really could be spent on educating providers and parents. So I'm paying a case manager right now, a former case manager, an hourly salary to help me with my HUNS planning, because there isn't anybody. There's supposed to be an independent service coordinator from the Regional Planning Commission, and they're great. I have no criticism of them, but they only have so much time. If you're really going to spend the money and find the personnel to provide the services, you got to have some know-how. And not everybody has that know-how. And I'm probably a little bit more advantaged than some because I've worked in supervisory roles. But I think that there are strategies that we could use in the future to build up supports within our community for families like me, like Deb, like others who are trying to do it too much on their own, because it's the only recourse. It is truly the only recourse. And so, right now I'm inclined to say, let's not spend money to maintain housing that the system is not allowing us to have individuals live in because there's inadequate staffing. Let's use the money in other ways to provide services, and some of those services may be to provide greater support to community partners who could provide training, and to parents who ultimately, or siblings, are responsible for the long-term care of these individuals. And I have been appalled over the last 10 years at the lack of infrastructure support. It was great in high school, then it ended. You know?
Go ahead, John.
So, and I think it's, this decision is very difficult for all of us to make, because I feel like it makes us feel like we failed in some way, and I think, one thing I would tell everybody is it's okay not to be okay about this. All of us are problem solvers. I spend my day trying to help families figure out solutions, and that's my job, is to figure out the solutions for people. And not being able to figure out a solution makes me just feel like I failed, and I know a lot of you have invested countless hours and have a lot of skin in the game, and so there's that much more emotion that goes with this decision. One thing I will say is the shortage is not just with SILAs. For medical assistants in the hospital, we have a huge shortage. We in my department, we're trying to hire medical assistant. There is just not enough, because part of it is the pay. We don't pay them, and it's a hard job. For nurses, there's a nursing shortage. when people have to pay for daycare for their kids, and they have 2 kids, and you're paying $1,300 a month for each child to be in daycare, and you're going to make 40, 50,000 a year as a nurse, as an registered nurse, you're paying for them to be in daycare. It doesn't make sense either. And that's someone who makes more money than someone who's working in a SILA. So it's sad to say, but I don't see this being viable or tenable in the future unless things change. And so, just being logical about it, I think the wisest decision would be to sell the SILAs. But I know, looking back on what we did, we provided 7 years of care for people that would not have gotten that otherwise. And so I think we should, at least think of that as a positive, that we provided some support for people that really needed it in the community. One thing I can say, in response to Julian, is maybe we can use the money that we get from selling the SILAs. And I don't know if it's possible, but to maybe create like a fund for people with DDB or developmental disabilities that would need to live in SILAs but can't, and have a home waiver, to maybe be able to get like some crisis funding for an emergency thing that they need, that family cannot afford. So if they qualify for a home waiver, then they qualify for like an emergency funding for a medical equipment or something specific. And we can set that money aside. The other thing I would say is, in the last year, at least from the mental health board perspective, we were looking at not being able to fund a lot of some of our projects. And there are things in the community that we were looking at as high value to fund, like helping people get their disability. Was it the Champaign healthcare consumers, right? And so, so I mean, that's just some of the things that I would think about for the future. But yeah, I mean, I wish I had better answers, and I know we all wish we had better answers, but this is kind of where we are right now.
So last night, the county board did approve the use of some of the ARPA fiscal recovery funds for the mental health board programs that we could not fund. So Leon is in the office right now. We've been working on contracts and letters all day. So I didn't want to, because there's no good news for the DD board, so I thought that's not fair to make that announcement, but I guess this is a good
Well,
time.
we're happy about that too.
Okay.
Okay, Julian, go ahead.
So, I don't want to. What I need to know before I could possibly vote to sell these things is first that is what the DD board votes to do. Because in my view, that's their responsibility. The DD board is responsible for getting the best care possible for people with developmental disabilities. And we're related, but it's primarily the DD board's decision, in my opinion. The other thing I need to know is, what are we going to do with the money? Because if we're just going to give one-time grants, I think it's throwing the money away. If we could just to pick up on your idea, which is great, maybe you guys have a way to figure this out. Maybe the D board knows how it wants to use that money. But, can we set up a fund that would be ongoing, that wouldn't have to be spent except when we wanted to? I don't know what the laws are about how public organization can do that, right? So we just need it. Oh, I don't care about that one in particular. There are a lot of things there are a lot of good works that could be done. I just like to know what they would be. I don't think I want to just get the money and have it be there and then disappear because we didn't think ahead of time about how to use it. So if those two things fall into place, I could say, great. Sorry, that's my feeling personally.
Can the money that we get from the sale of these two houses be invested while we make up our minds as to, I mean, there's always going to be houses for sale down the road. So in the meantime, we'll have this lump sum of money. Can it legally be invested since it's public money? Say that again?
Do you mean literally invested, like in a,
I
in a
mean, can it earn
product?
us some money while it's sitting here? So it's not just sitting here. Yes?
Well, that's sort of, that's really up to the county board. Like that, there's sort of, there are expectations about fund balances, and then you learn like a county next door has a gigantic fund balance and, compared to their budget. Like it's very much up to them. So I could help, but anyway, but these are all really interesting ideas, and I don't know the answers. So I can just, if there are certain things that you want me to look into, I will be happy to do that. But
Well, things happen slowly. And so, the sale of these houses could happen over the next couple of months because houses are selling very fast right now. But our ideas as to what to do with the money might take a year. So in the meantime, I think we should earn some interest on that money. Yeah, I was just thinking about, of what to do with the money, and I have served on both boards. And the one little piece that I never thought enough attention was paid to was the dual diagnosis people. And here we have a board for each side of that. And so if we do decide to sell, then we'll be, having a lot of discussions about what to do with the money. And I just want that in the list, that it seems to me that our two boards could collaborate and put our collective thoughts together on that group of people that I think I don't think they get the attention that they need, the dual diagnosis folks for, with DD and a mental health issue. So I would, I just want that in the list of things to think about. I don't have any idea how we would use the money to help that group, but be thinking.
I think that's actually the spirit of this project originally. These people, all of the people served there, they may not have a formal diagnosis, but they all had behavioral support needs that were substantial. And this is one of the reasons it was very difficult for them to find a placement. So they might have had dual diagnosis if the IDD weren't so prominent. So I think it's, kind of maybe why both boards were interested in the first place.
Excuse me, I like to consider myself a risk taker. Unlike Deb, I hate these words coming out of my mouth. We did try and get a local agency to manage these homes, any local agency that was interested, and we were not able to find anybody who was interested, and that's locally, which is much easier than an outsider. And I think the bottom line is we're not going to be able to find anybody to manage them or run them. And that's the key, is getting the management and the staff, because as obviously as a DD board or a mental health board, we're not going to provide direct service. So I think that's the issue. And I given our RFP 6 years ago, given the circumstances now, which are even worse, I don't think we're going to get any interest in somebody coming to Champaign to manage them.
Just to address, just to go back to Julian's request for information about or ideas about how we might spend the money. We right now have a request from an agency for transportation. this is an agency that provides day services for Champaign County residents in Piatt County because there's no place for them in this county. And that's something that there's a fair amount of interest on our board and a pretty positive outlook on trying to find some way to help these people help our people. But we've had discussion about Medicaid supplementation, who owns the van, how, legalities and the ins and outs, and we're trying to get that addressed. But that's just one way where we could take a chunk of money and I feel like we are providing an excellent service for Champaign County residents who don't have a way to get to and from their programming during the day or out and about in the community during the day from that particular site that they go to. And there's a tremendous amount of interest apparently from satellite communities around Champaign-Urbana. I think Muhammad in particular, from parents and caregivers in that community who are super excited about the possibility of sending their loved ones to Piatt County for services because they can't get services here. So that's just one thing that we've discussed on the board. And there are a lot of other things that we talk about all the time that are, I think, very worthwhile exploring. But we either haven't had the funding or we have too many regulatory issues to be able to come to a consensus about it.
Thanks. So I just personally would be in favor. I would be in favor of selling the houses and put the money into some kind of a fund. I don't know if it could be an investment fund that you could draw from. I just wouldn't be in favor of it being wildly distributed without and losing its intention. Some of the things you mentioned seem sensible to me. They would be in the same domain. It's trying to fill the same need. If the money could be drawn on when it made sense to do it, we wouldn't have to just, disperse it all at once if that's the case. I don't know what the case is, right? I mean, I just want to know what are the constraints then on the money, and if that suits your purposes, then it makes sense to me.
Well, I want to, I guess, echo what Julian is saying and also state that I don't think we would spend the money willy-nilly, that it's got to be dedicated towards developmental disabilities, because that's why the Mental Health Board contributed $50,000 a year. It was part of our obligation out of the, 677 or 760,000 a year. And I think that, it is incumbent upon both boards to be clear that if the houses are sold and the money that is recovered from the houses, that it be focused on continuing services within developmental disabilities. And it could include the expansion or development of new services. And so, I'm embarrassed and shocked that we have to go to Piatt County to get day services. But if that's what we have to do and what we need is a van, then if that's what we're up against, I have confidence in the DD board that they will come up with recommendations that we would all agree upon or support. And so I don't think it's really an issue of how's the money going to be used. I think that there is the spirit that it will be used specifically to support ongoing developmental disabilities initiatives and new initiatives. And so then the issue becomes, do we hold on to the houses and continue to spend some money in the hopes that things will change in the future? Or do we say, okay, we gave it a 7-year run and we can always acquire new houses. Yes, it will be expensive. We might have to put in a sprinkler system, just like we had to do with both of these houses. But, houses are commodities and they're brokered and sold often. And the villas are unique in that they were retrofitted for individuals with disabilities, but that's possible again in the future if staffing is available. So I would propose that we move forward with the idea, not necessarily today, if we want to sleep on it, think about it some more, but saying, let's not spend more money on something that is empty. Let's sell and look at how we could use the funds appropriately, knowing that this board has the capacity in the future, if circumstances change, to explore Scylla's again. And I'm being optimistic, I recognize.
I just realized my microphone's been on this whole time, so you've probably been hearing my heavy breathing. So we don't have a decision memorandum in front of us. If we were going to make a vote tonight, we would have to. We do? Where is it?
So there's a possible motion at the bottom of this page, but it doesn't quite fit the circumstance. I could,
Which page is it?
right here.
Oh,
Then
the
there's also,
page-
but if you wanted to sell the houses, it's important to select a realtor too, or reject all three of the bids. So I did not write a sample motion for that. But I did write a sample motion for authorizing me to accept a sale. Actually, the lawyer wrote that.
Is that in our packet?
No, it was in the packet a couple, like in June, but but you all were not ready to do that, so we skipped it.
Oh, okay.
But I can modify it if that's the direction you're going. But the first step would be select a realtor. The attorney did give me the advice that you could sell them without a realtor. And that sort of, the idea of that started when a person came into the office and said, I want to buy one of your houses for a Scylla for my son. And we were thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great if these houses could continue to be Scyllas, because then the added value means something and it's not a dollar amount thing. But the truth is that lady would have to find staff to serve her son in the same community where we can't find staff to serve people. So, that's obviously up to the buyer, but anyway, that's in that briefing memo that you could sell it without a realtor. If you wait more than a year, it would be good to solicit new bids from realtors just because this market will have changed. But if you are doing it now or in a few months, you could keep these same 3 realtor bids on the table and make a decision later. And I can modify that if you are going in that direction. Then the lawyer also gave me a suggested motion for authorizing me to accept the sale.
So just looking back at the last meeting, it seemed like the realtor, whose last name was Ward, the second one, had the highest proposal for the sales of the houses and had a lower cost on the commission or the expenses for the closing of the house. And I think you said that he worked with us before on these.
That's the company that's provided the maintenance, the property management services so far.
So he knows the property well. And I think in this climate, I think these homes should be easy sells. So I know the third one didn't really stipulate what they would propose as the selling, as the cost for, or the selling price for the homes. So it seemed like I would go with the second one, Ward, but I would like to hear other people's thoughts.
Sorry about this. If we're going to vote, I don't know if we're voting, or if there's a motion to sell the houses, or I'm not, I got a little bit lost in the process here. Because
You're still discussing.
Pardon? Yeah, so all I was about to say now is, I would like to see, whenever you suggest what a motion might look like, before we pick a real estate agent, we have, seems a little bit backwards, but to make that the first thing we do, since we haven't decided to do it
You could
yet.
move to accept the bid proposal from, for example, Ward Homes, or Nick Ward, I think is how he presented it. Nick Ward of Joel Ward Homes, yeah. So, I mean, either way is fine, I think, because we know who it is. If that's the one you want to. So you could just make a motion to engage with that Realtor for the sale of one or both homes. And then the later motion, which is optional, was written by the attorney to
It's
authorize.
possible that I'm not following the conversation because I have a difficult hearing people through their masks, and I can't wear my hearing aids when I'm wearing the mask because it knocks them off. So I'm doing the best I can to follow this conversation. So I apologize if I'm not hearing what everybody's saying. But I do not wish to vote. I would like the motion to include what will happen to the money. Where will it be? And how will it be decided how it's used and what are the possibilities? I think we should tie those things together. I don't think we should first sell them and then have the money and not have a clear vision of what we're doing with it. I'm happy to hear entirely from the Developmental Disabilities Board as to have the ideas they have or have a common discussion about it. But I don't really want to sell these things until I understand what we're going to do with the asset money.
So we'll go, okay, let's first go with developmental disabilities first. And
Okay, I respectfully disagree with you, Julian. I don't think that that's appropriate for this meeting to talk about what to do with the money, because that's going to take a lot of discussion. I appreciate your concern, and I think we all agree with you about your concern that this be used for the benefit of developmentally disabled IDDD individuals and people in our community, and that should be duly noted. But I think spending time talking about, projects at this point would be, it would not be useful use of our time. I think what we need to do, and I'm starting to feel a little bit strongly that we do need to move forward, and that it would be good if we could, I can't even read this. It's written in legalese, and I can't even read it. Well, we just need to make a decision that we are going to authorize the executive director to initiate the process of selling these homes. And what we do with the money, we can make, we'll get to that. You have to have a little bit of confidence that we'll do that.
I just want to say that I really agree with Ann, what she just said. And I think it's an important point that the DD board is right now just getting ready to reassess priorities, goals, and we're trying to assess need in the community again. So kind of come up with projects and things that we might be doing. It's putting kind of the cart before the horse right now when we're just coming into within the next few months, right, Lynn? Kind of fine tuning our direction.
any other DD board?
I also think it would be useful, as Deb said, when we're setting our priorities, is hear any ideas that the community agencies might have. I would like to open it up for that as well, to see if they come up with some good ideas, additional good ideas.
Now we can help.
Yeah, I just had a process question mostly for Lynn. So I'm trying to remember, since the motion was in the June packet, or whatever that was. But I thought there was a step, like that we were going to authorize you to do something, but then the board had kind of an approval. So at that point, I think maybe to kind of help with Julian's concerns, if we had a few more ideas at that stage, that might be helpful before we do the final approval. Again, I'm trying to do this from memory, but
The only things so both boards authorized us in June to get the homes appraised, which we did, and the reports are in here. And I was sad that they haven't added as much value as, we spent to make them SILAs. And then the other thing that I was authorized to do was solicit realtor bids. And the idea was to get at least 3. We got exactly 3. One is, as you said, seems less detailed, sort of incomplete, but it's still a valid bid. It followed the instructions. So those were the only things I was authorized to do. Both boards chose not to authorize me to sell the homes. That was premature. So things you could do tonight. And Georgiana, you asked a question that I didn't answer correctly. It didn't occur to me at the time, but the problem with interest income this year and maybe next year is it's very low. We were rocking for a few years, like really getting nice revenue through interest on these funds, and then it stopped. So I don't know what it will be like in 2020. They're asking me to project low interest income, but I mean, so anyway, like that's a fine idea, and all the information I get about it is from the county administrative offices and the county board. But anyway, so I'm sorry, I just wanted to return to that because I felt I didn't give a good answer. But to your question, I was not authorized to do anything else.
Right, but I remember there being a motion that we kind of tabled because then there would be a step, like, and maybe it was the approval of the realtor bid. Was that what I'm thinking of then? I thought there was a step of approval before a final sale.
So you can, the way the motion and the realtor bid process was published includes, you can reject any and all bids. So you can select a realtor from the 3 bids. You can reject all the realtor bid proposals. And if you do, you can go, ask me to post it again, word it differently or something. That's all. Yeah, we can't really sell the houses without some kind of action regarding the realtor bids, I guess, and you can leave them on the table. I think you asked the question last week. You can leave them on the table, maybe you can, for a while. According to our attorney, you could decide on those 3 bids later.
But if we move forward tonight, select the realtor, then we got offers in. That was more my question. Is there, what's that process?
Well, the attorney suggested that you authorize me to accept a bid on the house, or, bids on the house, to accept sales.
Authorize Lynn to accept a realtor bid. Then the realtor has to come back with a sale proposal, correct?
2 of them presented proposals for sale.
Right.
The 3rd one said she would give more information if we wanted to. So you could select a realtor and authorize me to engage with that realtor in a contract to sell one or both houses.
And if you weren't happy with the conduct of the realtor or what the realtor is able to present to you in terms of offers, do you have the capacity to say no?
You mean to reject a sale of the
Yes.
home? I think we would have to make sure that that's built into the contract.
Yes, I would like that to be part of the contract. And then just another side note, I think we have to have confidence in the DD board to use the money from the sales in a responsible manner. And that we don't have to, if the houses actually have strong offers and Lynn believes we should move ahead based on the offers, that we don't have to have the ideas laid out. They will come. And we've had a really strong working relationship with the DD board. I don't want the mental health board to suddenly micromanage the DD board. I don't think that was suggested.
That's
but it's
definitely
almost-
not my intention.
I know, Julian, because you're not a micromanager, but it's almost coming out that way. So I just want to clarify that we have confidence that the DD board will follow its process and have good ideas to present for the use of whatever funds are recovered from the house. So I don't want how the funds will be used tied in with the sale of the house. I think we have to have an expeditious process to support Lynn in choosing a realtor and then making a decision about the final sale. And I'm not a realtor and I don't know all the legal issues, but that's why we have an executive director.
Okay. The first motion, I would like to move to authorize the executive director to engage with Joel Ward. Is that right?
Call
For
the
this,
voting.
for the sale of both houses. I'd like to make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
So are we still talking about it? Or, right?
So
can
now we have
discuss
discussion
now
about
that
it.
There's a motion on the floor, right? So just, just want to understand this. It's not about micromanaging. Where's the money going to go? Where will the money be? No, not how will it be spent. Where will it be?
The money can go into the Scylla Facilities Project Fund because that fund still exists. It's a shared fund. So your intergovernmental agreement for all these administrative costs is 42.15% is DDB. But in that Scylla Project Fund, the agreement is 50%. So it kind of makes sense to me that you would set it there and we would keep that fund for a while until you have an opportunity to have these discussions.
That's all I'm asking about. Thank you very much. That clarifies.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and the auditor's office would probably appreciate it too.
Any other discussion?
Just because I'm not hearing so well. Yes, this proposal is to move to authorize the executive director to engage with Joel Ward Homes for the sale of both houses.
Just another process question. Does that, what Julian brought up about where the money goes for the sale, does that have to be voted on or anything?
No, I think that's where, I mean, we can, sure, if you want to do that, I think
don't know.
that's, it's
That's just a
perfectly fine to move that and like, so then it's really clear. But that's just where it'll be for until such time as you have ideas of how to spend it. And there is some language in the intergovernmental agreement about how it's split, since it's not a symmetrical split right now. But it makes a lot of sense to me to do that. So if you want to make it official, we could make that the second motion. I'm going to write these more clearly.
You ready for the roll call? Okay. Susan Fowler. Matt Hausman,
Yes.
Blaine Valencia, Julian Rappaport,
Yes.
James Crandall. Yes. John Paul Youakim,
Yes.
Joe Omo Asagie, Deb Ruth,
Yes.
Georgiana Schuster,
Yes.
Sue Suter,
Yes.
and Robin.
Yes. Okay. All right. There are going to be two more motions, if you can bear with me. The second motion is to authorize the executive director to accept any offer on each house meeting or exceeding the asking price without further board action, on such terms and conditions as she deems appropriate, including the option to reject any and all offers.
Discussion.
Just a question then. So Lynn, would the idea be if there wasn't one meeting or exceeding the offer, would you come to us and ask if we want to move forward or?
It seems like this motion would tell me not to accept an offer that's less than the listed price, which I think is, I mean, these are assets. They can sit empty for a minute.
based on what we're seeing in the housing market, I mean, there are bidding wars going on in this county. So I think we're safe to say that it has to be at or above asking. And if, in 4 weeks or whatever, when we're about to have our next meetings, that at that time we might have to revise the motion if that's acceptable.
Hannah Robin,
Yes.
Sue Suter,
Yes.
Georgiana Schuster,
Yes.
Deb Bruce,
Yes.
Joe Mostagier,
Yes.
John Paul Youakim,
Yes.
James Crandall,
Yes.
Julian Rappaport,
Yes.
Elaine Valencia,
Yes.
Matt Hausman,
Yes.
Susan Fowler.
Okay, the third motion is I move to hold the proceeds from the sale of the properties in the Scylla Facilities Fund. Is that right?
That is correct.
Do you want to add something about to be determined with further discussions, how to use the funds, or is that just understood? Well, I'll leave that for further discussion. Maybe somebody can make a friendly amendment.
Well, all we're doing with the motion is saying where the money's going to be held. So I don't see why we
Yeah.
need. Second.
Susan Fowler, Matt Hausman, Elaine Palencia,
Yes.
Julian Rappaport,
Yes.
James Sprandel,
Yes.
Jean Paul Youakim,
Yes.
Joe Mostagier,
Yes.
Deb Bruce,
Yes.
Georgiana Schuster,
Yes.
Sue Suter,
Yes.
and Robin.
Yes. I move that we have communal crying for 30 seconds. And then get on.
Oh, it's crying time again. That's
Board announcement.
motion to adjourn?
Their board announcement.
I moved that we adjourn.
Second,
I'll second it.
all those in favor? Aye.
It was painful. We have liquor now.
That was a good one.